February the 2nd, 1959, the desolate subarctic slopes of Kolatsyakhl, the Dead Mountain, in the Russian Ural Mountains. A group of 10 seasoned hikers led by the young and ambitious Igor Dyatlov established their final camp. They were skilled, prepared, and traversing terrain known only to the indigenous Mansi people, yet 9 of them would never descend. For over 6 decades, the fate of the Dyatlov group has remained the world's most persistent, terrifying, and fiercely debated historical puzzle. It is a story whispered in the dark corners of the internet, fueled by sensationalist claims of military secrets, monstrous encounters, and paranormal phenomena. But history, when viewed through an objective lens, rarely yields to the fantastic. It yields to the brutal, chaotic power of nature, understood only through forensic analysis and cold physics. Welcome to Echoes of History. Today we initiate a scientific deconstruction. We are not here to chase shadows or resurrect myths. We are here to follow the unyielding data, to dissect the facts of the original investigation, and to present the most realistic, unbiased, and academically rigorous explanation for the tragedy that unfolded on that mountain slope. The truth of the Dyatlov Pass Incident is less a conspiracy and more a perfect, horrifying storm of rare environmental and physiological phenomena. The official search began weeks after the group failed to report back. What they discovered defies rational action and established survival protocol. On February 26th, the expedition found the hikers' tent, or what was left of it. It had been pitched poorly on the slope, likely due to a fierce storm. Crucially, the tent was cut open from the inside using a knife. Clothes, boots, personal effects, and even a partially consumed meal were left behind. This was the first undeniable fact. Something catastrophic forced the group to abandon the safety of their shelter instantly, with no time to retrieve their essential gear. Footprints, 9 sets in total, were preserved in the thin layer of fresh snow. They led downhill toward the forest 1.5 kilometers away. The most chilling detail, many of the footprints belonged to individuals who were barefoot or wearing only socks. They were not walking, they were scrambling, panicked into a raging blizzard with temperatures plummeting below 25 degrees Celsius. The bodies were discovered in 2 stages. The first 5 were found within the first month. These were primarily closer to the edge of the forest, succumbing to hypothermia. 2 of them, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko, were found near a large cedar tree, having apparently tried to start a fire. The remaining 4 were only located in May, after the deep snows had melted, buried beneath several meters of snow in a ravine, some 75 meters deeper into the forest. It is the fate of these 4 individuals that has spawned the most persistent conspiracy theories due to the unique nature of their injuries. The official Soviet investigation concluded only that the hikers died from a compelling natural force. A conclusion that was as ambiguous as it was terrifying, and one that paved the way for decades of wild speculation. To understand this incident, we must move beyond the mystery and engage with the dry, clinical facts of the autopsies. The injuries sustained by the 4 hikers found in the ravine, Lyudmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, and Alexander Kolevatov, are the core forensic puzzle. 3 of the 4 had suffered serious, non-external trauma. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol suffered a massive skull fracture, while Semyon Zolotaryov suffered multiple broken ribs. Lyudmila Dubinina suffered the most serious internal injuries, multiple rib fractures, and the devastating loss of parts of her tongue, eyes, and lips. Crucially, the medical examiner noted that these injuries were equivalent to those suffered in a major car crash. Yet there were no external lacerations or bleeding associated with the broken ribs, indicating they were crushed by immense blunt force trauma. This immediately discounts a physical struggle with a human attacker, which would have left defensive wounds and external bruising. Now let us address the sensational details often misconstrued. Radiation. High levels were found on some of the victims' clothing. The factual explanation: the hikers, having handled kerosene lamps and likely working in military surplus clothing, may have accumulated harmless, low-level traces of naturally occurring radioisotopes. There is no evidence of a massive radiation source or military weapon use. Missing eyes and tongue. This is often attributed to a non-human assailant. The realistic, unbiased explanation is the most unsettling: post-mortem scavenging. Dubinina's body was found partially submerged in a stream. The soft, exposed tissues, eyes and tongue, are highly susceptible to decomposition and scavenging by insects or small stream animals, a phenomenon common in forensic pathology. This trauma occurred after her death. The physical evidence points not to an attacker, but to a sudden, overwhelming force of nature. For too long, the narrative has been hijacked by conspiracy. Let us dispense with the non-scientific speculation and focus on the mechanics of the mountain. The theories of the Yeti, secret military tests, or alien intervention all fail the fundamental test of Occam's razor and physical plausibility. They require the introduction of outside actors for whom there is zero forensic evidence. The true villain was the mountain itself. In the 21st century, the most compelling scientifically verified explanation emerged, championed by geologists and meteorologists and validated by the comprehensive 2020 Russian investigation: the slab avalanche model. The key to this model lies in two rare phenomena. Firstly, katabatic winds. In this specific geography, powerful downward-sloping winds are channeled down the mountain, compacting the snow on the slope where the tent was pitched. This compaction creates an extremely dense, heavy slab of snow. Secondly, the trigger. The group likely cut into the snow to pitch their tent, unknowingly destabilizing the massive hidden slab above them. A simple vibration, perhaps stepping onto the edge of the tent platform or even the friction of the wind itself, could have triggered a shallow, highly dense avalanche. This was not a typical avalanche. It was a dense, localized mass of snow and ice, perhaps only 50 centimeters deep but weighing thousands of kilograms, which crashed silently onto the tent roof. These immediate and unexpected effects explain the following fundamental facts. Firstly, the panic. The force was sudden and overwhelming, crushing the tent and injuring those within. Secondly, the internal trauma. The sheer weight of the dense snow and ice explains the massive blunt force trauma to the skulls and chests of Zolotaryov and Dubinina, injuries that resulted from being crushed against the hard snow or the internal contents of the tent. They did not need to be hit by a man or a bomb, they were crushed by physics. Thirdly, the escape. The survivors desperately cut the tent open from the inside because the entrance was blocked by the crushing weight, forcing them to flee immediately, underdressed and terrified. Having escaped the crushed tent, the group's actions become the final, most haunting piece of the puzzle. Why did they walk downhill, away from the shelter? Why did they seem to partially disrobe? This is where human physiology takes over, delivering the final fatal blow: hypothermia. The core answer lies in a phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing. As the human body enters the terminal stages of hypothermia, the brain malfunctions. A process called vasoconstriction, the narrowing of blood vessels to preserve core heat, suddenly fails. The blood vessels rapidly dilate, causing a massive searing rush of heat to the skin. The victim experiences a profound burning sensation of overheating. In a state of delirium, the hikers would have genuinely believed they were too hot and frantically begun to tear off their clothes. This explains why Doroshenko was found almost naked and why others were missing crucial layers, an irreversible physiological command overriding survival instinct. Furthermore, the initial terrifying rush of the avalanche forced them to flee 1.5 kilometers to the visible shelter of the forest line. But the deeper they went, the colder they became, their rational decision-making degraded by the intense cold. They became scattered and disorganized, their attempts to build a fire futile, their final descent into the ravine merely the confused search for shelter that ultimately became their icy grave. The strange positions and intermingled clothing found on the later bodies, kicking off their own clothes, then trying to retrieve clothes from those who had already died, speaks to the utter chaos and mental degradation caused by the severe cold. The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains a horrific tragedy, but its true power is not in the mystery, but in the devastating reality. The narrative we reconstruct through forensic facts, physics, and medical science is far less sensational than the myths, but infinitely more terrifying. 9 young, skilled individuals were killed not by a monster or a government conspiracy, but by the statistically rare, perfect convergence of 3 silent killers: a katabatic wind-driven avalanche, the delusion of paradoxical hypothermia, and the unforgiving cold of the Ural Mountains. The echoes of history confirms that the compelling natural force cited by the original Soviet investigators was accurate, though inadequately explained. The dead mountain yielded its secrets not to imagination, but to rigorous scientific method. The tragic reality is that sometimes the true horror lies not in the unknown, but in the cold, unfeeling indifference of the natural world. If you appreciate this objective, scientific approach to historical mysteries, please like this video, subscribe to Echoes of History, and share your thoughts below.